I didn't expect to spend Christmas snowed in with the guy the first used to crush on in high school. Honestly, when my flight got canceled and I found myself stranded in a sleepy Colorado town just days before Christmas, I thought the holiday was ruined. I had booked a cheap Airbnb to crash at while I waited for another flight home. Nothing fancy, just a warm bed and Wi-Fi. What I didn't expect was for the door to open and reveal Mason Avery. Mason, as in my best friend's older brother, as in the guy who used to drive us to soccer practice in his beat-up Jeep, always blasting Red Hot Chili Peppers like it was a religion. The guy that first used to sneak glances at when he'd walk around the house shirtless, never knowing that I was trying not to pass out every time he said my name. And now he was standing there in a flannel, holding a half-drunk cup of coffee, looking just as hot as I remembered, if not hotter. "Eli?" he asked, eyes narrowing in recognition. "Wait, Eli Carter?" I blinked. "Mason?" He let out a short laugh, shaking his head like he couldn't believe it. What are the odds? Apparently, the cozy cabin I'd booked was actually the guest house behind Mason's family home. Something about a scheduling error with the Airbnb app, or maybe a miscommunication between his parents, who now lived in Florida and rented the property out. Either way, Mason was staying in the main house for the holidays, and I was supposed to have the guest cabin to myself. But the weather had other plans. That night, a record-breaking snowstorm hit the area. We lost power in the cabin, and Mason, being the annoyingly responsible adult he'd apparently turned into, knocked on my door with an emergency lantern and a blanket. "You can't stay out here," he said, voice barely audible over the howling wind. "The furnace is electric. You'll freeze." So I followed him back to the main house, dragging my duffel bag behind me like a sad little suitcase of broken plans. And that's how I ended up spending Christmas Eve under the same roof as Mason Avery, drinking whiskey by the fireplace, while the snow piled up outside and neither of us had anywhere to go. It was surreal. "You want another?" Mason asked, lifting the bottle toward me. I hesitated, already feeling warm from the first glass. "Yeah, why not? It's not like I have a flight to catch." He smiled, slow and a little crooked, and I swear it did something weird to my heart, the kind of smile that made it hard to breathe. "Still living in LA?" he asked, handing me the glass. "Yeah, working in marketing now, mostly freelance stuff. What about you?" "Moved back a year ago. I do contracting work, houses, renovations, that kind of thing." "You're the hot contractor everyone talks about in small-town Facebook groups, huh?" He laughed. "I doubt it. But sure, let's go with that." There was a beat of silence, the kind that felt heavy but not awkward, just loaded, like we were both circling something neither of us had figured out how to say. "Can't believe it's been, 8 years?" he said, leaning back on the couch. "Something like that. Last time I saw you, you were making out with Kara Fielding at that graduation party," he winced. "Jesus, don't remind me, she bit me, left a full-on mark." I laughed, and it felt too good. Too easy. Somewhere between that and the second glass of whiskey, I forgot that we weren't the same age, or that he used to be just my friend's older brother. Now he was just Mason, sitting way too close, wearing way too little, a worn-out hoodie and joggers that did nothing to hide the fact that he'd filled out in all the best ways. The storm outside kept raging. Wind howled like a warning, but the fire crackled warm between us. "Hey," he said suddenly, voice quieter. "This is gonna sound weird, but did you used to have a crush on me?" I froze. My stomach did a backflip. "What?" "I don't know. Just sometimes you'd look at me like I was trying not to combust," I said, then immediately regretted it. But Mason just looked at me, eyes soft but unreadable. "Yeah, like that." I laughed. Nervous, embarrassed. I was 15. Of course I had a crush on you. You were like every gay kid's nightmare. Hot, straight, and lived in the same house half the time. He didn't say anything for a long moment, just stared into the fire, lips slightly parted. When he finally spoke, his voice was so low I almost missed it. "I'm not as straight as I used to be." That sentence rewired my whole nervous system. My heart kicked into gear, pulse loud in my ears. I turned to look at him, trying to read the expression on his face, but it was guarded, hesitant. "Mason," he met my gaze. "I'm just saying, in case it's still relevant." It was relevant. God, it was so relevant I didn't know what to do with my hands. I should have said something clever, something calm, something that didn't make me sound like I was about to have a heart attack. Instead, all I managed was, "Ow." Mason gave me a sidelong glance, amused. "That's it? Just, oh?" "I'm processing," I said quickly, gripping my whiskey glass a little too tight. It's not every day your high school crush casually tells you they're maybe not so straight. "Did you really have a crush on me?" he asked, quieter this time. I looked at him. "You're really asking that?" He shrugged with a sheepish smile. "I don't know. You were always polite, kind of quiet. I figured you didn't like me." I stared at him. "Mason, I practically passed out every time you ruffled my hair." He blinked, then laughed, shaking his head. "Damn, I really didn't know." "Well, you were kind of busy making out with Kara Fielding and driving your Jeep like it was a race car." He smirked, taking a sip of his drink. "Yeah, I was a bit of a tool back then." "You said it, not me." We both laughed, and the tension loosened a little, but didn't disappear. It just curled around us in a different shape now, less awkward, more electric. He leaned back against the couch, stretching out his legs until his socked foot brushed mine. He didn't move it. I didn't either. Outside, the wind howled and snow slapped against the windows like it was trying to get in. But inside, everything felt strangely calm, warm, charged. "I've been thinking about you lately," Mason said suddenly. My head turned fast. "What?" "Just randomly. You popped into my head a few weeks ago, out of nowhere. I even looked you up on Instagram, but you don't really post." "I'm a lurker," I admitted. "Too many clients follow me. Gotta keep it PG." "Should have sent me a message," he said, voice low. "And said what?" "Hey Mason, remember me? Your little brother's friend who used to stare at your arms like they were a religion?" He laughed, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "That would have worked." I gave him a look, but I couldn't help smiling too. "So, what are you saying exactly?" Mason looked into the fire for a second before speaking. "I'm saying maybe I didn't just invite you into the house because the power went out." My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means maybe I saw your name on the Airbnb reservation and didn't tell my parents right away. Maybe I decided to stay longer than planned. Maybe I thought if I saw you again, something might happen." I was stunned, speechless even. Mason Avery, who once felt as unreachable to me as a movie star, was telling me he wanted something to happen. "You always seemed untouchable," I finally said. I felt that way too. Untouchable, like I wasn't allowed to even think about this kind of thing. "And now?" He shifted slightly, his foot pressing more firmly against mine. "Now I'm not 15. I've done some living, made some mistakes, figured out I don't have to live by anyone's rules but my own." The words hung between us like smoke. Then he said, "Can I ask you something?" I nodded. "If we weren't snowed in right now, if we were just two guys at a bar catching up, would you have wanted me to kiss you?" I didn't answer right away. I couldn't. My brain was trying to catch up with everything happening in real time. So instead of replying, I leaned in just a little, just enough for him to notice. Mason's hand found the side of my leg, his thumb brushed against my knee. And for a second, I thought he was going to close the space between us right there. But he stopped. "You sure?" "Yeah," I said just barely above a whisper. "I've been sure since I was 15. He kissed me. It wasn't rushed or intense. It wasn't like the drunken makeouts I'd had in college bars or the weird, awkward first dates I'd forced myself to go on. It was soft, slow, intentional. The kind of kiss you don't forget years later because it wasn't about the kiss. It was about everything behind it. And when we pulled apart, I didn't want to move away. "You're not going to ghost me after this, are you?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. He laughed. "You're literally stuck here, Eli. You're not going anywhere." "Okay, but when the snow melts..." "I'll still be here," he said, "unless you run first." I looked at him, his face so familiar and new at the same time. "Not planning to." We sat there in silence for a bit. The fire was dying down, but neither of us moved to stoke it. Eventually, Mason stood and reached for my hand. "Come on," he said softly. "It's late." My heart stuttered. "You want me to?" "I just want you close." And that's how I ended up sharing a bed with Mason Avery on Christmas Eve, listening to the wind scream outside while his arms settled around my waist like it belonged there. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but tonight? It was perfect. I didn't sleep much that night. It wasn't the wind outside or the unfamiliar bed or the creaky old house. It was him, Mason, warm behind me, his arm draped casually over my waist like he'd done it 100 times. Like it wasn't the first time we were sharing a bed, even though it absolutely was. At some point, I must have dozed off, because I woke to soft morning light leaking through the curtains and the smell of coffee drifting in from the hallway. Mason wasn't in bed anymore. His side was still warm, though. That somehow made my stomach flip. I sat up slowly, running a hand through my hair, wondering how I was supposed to act. What were the rules here? Did last night count as a closeness? Was it just two snowed-in adults sharing body heat and nostalgia? Or was it more? Before I could spiral further, Mason's voice called from down the hall. "There's coffee if you want some. And I found a half-eaten cinnamon roll in the freezer if you're feeling brave." I padded into the kitchen, the hardwood cold under my feet. Mason was at the stove, wearing the same joggers from last night and a thermal shirt that hugged his back in a way I had no business noticing this early. "You survived the night," he said without turning. "Barely. I think I pulled a muscle trying not to touch you too much." He chuckled. "You failed, by the way." I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? You definitely touched me." He glanced over his shoulder, smirking. "Your foot was hooked around my leg for, half the night," I groaned. "That wasn't on purpose." I didn't say I minded. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just sipped my coffee, letting the warmth fill the silence. After a minute, he said, "I meant what I said, about not being as straight as I used to be." I looked at him. "Yeah?" He leaned against the counter, folding his arms. "I've dated a few guys. Nothing serious. One guy back in Denver, a guy that first met through work once, but I don't think I ever let myself really be in it. Not fully. And now?" He shrugged, but there was something careful in the way he held my gaze. "Now I'm 30, single, and realizing I don't want to be alone for every holiday from here on out." The vulnerability in his voice surprised me. Mason Avery, the confident, sarcastic, built like a lumberjack guy the first used to pine over, was laying it all out. No performance, no bravado, just him. I stepped closer, leaning against the counter beside him. "Same," I said. "I'm tired of one-night things and swiping through apps like I'm shopping for groceries. I want something." He looked at me. "And what if that something's already here?" I felt my breath catch. Not because I didn't want to hear it, but because I wanted to believe it so badly that it scared me. "You know this is complicated, right?" I said softly. "Your brother, our history, the fact that we live in totally different cities." He nodded. "I know, but I also know you're here right now, and I'd be an idiot not to try." I smiled, small and a little shaky. "You've always kind of been an idiot." "True, but I'm trying to turn it around." He reached for my hand then, just lightly, like testing the waters, and when I didn't pull away, he intertwined our fingers and let out a small sigh. We stood like that for a while, drinking coffee, listening to the wind slow down outside. The storm had eased overnight. Through the kitchen window, I could see the morning sun glinting off fresh snowbanks. Trees drooped heavy with white. "You think the roads will open soon?" I asked. "Probably," Mason said. "Plows usually come through by midday." I exhaled. Back to the real world. "Not yet," he said. "It's Christmas, remember?" "Right," I said. "Merry Christmas." He gave me a soft smile. "Merry Christmas, Eli." Then he leaned in and kissed me again. Slow, familiar now, but still carrying all the weight of something new. Something real. That kiss felt different than the first. The first had been a surprise. This one felt like a promise. By mid-morning, the snowplows had rumbled through the street, carving a messy path out of the drifts. Christmas music played softly from Mason's phone in the corner of the living room. Acoustic versions. Chill and kind of moody, the kind of thing you'd play in the background while making hot cocoa with someone you didn't expect to kiss the night before. I was sitting on the couch, still wearing Mason's hoodie, because mine was freezing from hanging near the door last night. He brought over a plate with 2 pancakes, looking entirely too domestic for someone who used to make fun of people who posted brunch pics. He plopped down next to me. "I made them heart-shaped," he said, showing me 2 blobs vaguely resembling organs. "That's deeply romantic," I deadpanned. "And also mildly concerning." We were joking, but underneath it, there was a current I couldn't ignore. A quiet closeness that wasn't there the day before. Every time our knees bumped, every glance that lingered, it all felt new, but also weirdly overdue. I didn't know how to describe it, but I felt more like myself with Mason than I had in a long time. Not the version of me that put on a confident face in Zoom meetings or smiled through awkward dates. The real version. Quiet, occasionally sarcastic, and terrible at accepting that something good might actually be happening. But then my phone buzzed, and I made the mistake of looking. It was a text from Ryan, my ex, the last guy the first dated, if 6 messy weeks and 1 birthday gift returned counts as dating. "Ryan, Merry Christmas. Hope you're warm today. Thinking about you." Mason was sipping his coffee, not noticing the change in my expression. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I didn't reply. I didn't want to, but I also didn't put my phone down. Mason must have sensed the silence because he finally glanced over. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied, too quickly. He didn't push, but something shifted in his posture. Slight, but there. A lean back, a glance away. I set the phone down. "It was just someone I used to talk to." "Old friend?" "Old mistake," I said, trying to brush it off, but I could tell he wasn't sure how to react. We were still so new, whatever this was, and I had just reminded both of us that the outside world still existed, that I wasn't his just because we shared a kiss in a snowstorm. And maybe that scared me more than I wanted to admit. We sat in silence for a minute, the kind that wasn't tense exactly, but wasn't easy either. Then Mason said, quietly, "You don't owe me anything, Eli. I just want to be honest about what I want. And I want this. With you." My chest tightened. I could feel that familiar reflex kicking in, the one that told me to run, to retreat into something easier, less vulnerable. But I didn't want to do that, not with him. "I want this too," I said. I'm bad at trusting that something real won't fall apart." Mason nodded slowly. "That's fair, but you don't have to be perfect at it. Just don't shut down, okay? Let me be the one person you don't have to keep walls up around." I looked at him, this guy who used to be a crush and now felt like something else entirely. "I'm trying," I said, and I meant it. We spent the afternoon baking gingerbread cookies that came out looking like distorted crime scene chalk outlines. Mason found an old sled in the garage, and we took turns nearly breaking our necks down the driveway. We were like kids again, laughing too hard, cheeks flushed, breath visible in the cold. There were no more texts from Ryan. I didn't check my phone again. That night, we built a fire and curled up under one blanket on the couch. He let his head rest against mine, and I realized I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong anymore. For once, I just let it be. Just me and him. And the way he whispered, "I'm glad you got snowed in," like it was the best thing that ever happened to him. The day after Christmas, the roads were clear, but we didn't talk about leaving. I hadn't even checked my airline app. My suitcase was still half unpacked in Mason's guest room. Not the one I was supposed to be staying in, but the one across the hall. His room. The one where I'd spent the last 2 nights with his arm thrown lazily across my chest like it was always meant to be there. We moved around each other in this quiet rhythm that felt natural, cooking together, doing dishes, even taking turns feeding the neighbor's cat because the lady next door had called Mason to say she was stuck out of town. It was domestic. Weirdly so. And I think that's what made it dangerous, because I could feel myself starting to hope. On the afternoon of the 26th, We were halfway through a Die Hard is technically a Christmas movie argument when Mason's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it and froze. "Shit," he muttered. "What?" I asked, sitting up straighter. He held up the screen. "Jake, his younger brother. Your guest still here? Coming by to drop off some of Dad's old tools." I blinked. Jake. My best friend since middle school. The one who had no idea I was currently cuddling on his brother's couch in his brother's hoodie after sleeping in his brother's bed. "Oh," I said. Mason ran a hand through his hair. He said he was driving back from Boulder today, but I didn't think he'd actually stop by. "When's he getting here?" Mason checked the time. 20 minutes, maybe less. He's already in town. I stood up like someone had just pulled a fire alarm. Okay, this is fine. I'll just go back to the guest cabin. Pretend like I've been there this whole time." Mason looked at me. "You don't have to do that." "I kinda do," I said. "Unless you're ready to explain to your brother why I'm in your house wearing your clothes and eating your cereal." He opened his mouth like he wanted to argue, but then he exhaled and nodded. "All right, yeah, I get it." We scrambled. I grabbed my bag, my charger, my socks from the living room floor. Mason even stuffed the blanket we'd used into the closet like it was evidence at a crime scene. I slipped out the back door just as a pickup truck crunched into the driveway. Back in the cold, dim cabin, I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. It felt ridiculous, like sneaking out after a one-night stand in high school. Except it wasn't that. Not even close, I didn't know what it was. And that was part of the problem. Half an hour later, Mason texted. "Mason." "He left. I told him you were here during the storm and took the cabin." Didn't ask too many questions. I stared at the message longer than I should have. Then my phone buzzed again. "Mason. You okay?" I typed, deleted, retyped. "Me. Yeah, just thinking." I wanted to say more. That I hated hiding. That it felt weird to go from sleeping in his arms to pretending I wasn't even there. That I didn't know what we were doing, or what came next. But I didn't send any of that. Later that night, Mason knocked on the cabin door. I let him in, and he stood in the doorway for a moment, looking like he wanted to say something big. Instead, he just said, "Can I stay?" I stepped aside. We didn't talk much as we got into bed, this time in the too small cabin mattress. He pulled me close and buried his face in my neck like he was trying to escape something. "I didn't like pretending," he mumbled. "I didn't either." He sighed. "I'll tell him, just not like this, not rushed." "I'm not asking you to," I said quietly. "Just don't ask me to disappear when it's inconvenient." That made him pull back, look at me fully. "I'd never ask you to do that," he said. "I'm not letting this be a one-weekend thing, Eli." I didn't say anything, but I believed him. By the time I finally boarded a flight home, the holidays were technically over. New Year's was 2 days away, and everyone at the airport looked either hungover or heartbroken. I sat by the gate, scrolling through photos I had taken on my phone. Blurry snow-covered trees, the gingerbread cookies Mason and I tried and failed to decorate, a picture of the fireplace we took on Christmas night when he fell asleep with his head on my shoulder. No selfies, no us, but every photo felt like him. When he dropped me off at the airport, we didn't say too much. Neither of us were great with goodbyes. He helped me with my bag, leaned against the driver's side door like he was trying not to look too bummed. "You gonna text me the second you land?" he asked. "No," I said, smiling. "I'm gonna make you sweat for at least 2 hours, he smirked. "So cruel. I learned from the best." He stepped closer then, hesitated, then said screw it, and kissed me right there in front of the drop-off zone. It was quick, nothing dramatic, but it stayed with me the entire flight. I could still feel it hours later, his hand on the back of my neck, the softness of his mouth, the way he said my name when we pulled apart. Eli. Just like that, like it mattered. Back in LA, the rhythm of normal life came rushing back fast. Emails, deadlines, traffic, laundry. But Mason didn't disappear into memory the way people sometimes do after a short, surreal holiday thing. He texted, called, sent voice notes. Once, he sent me a video of himself trying to cook one of the pancake recipes I'd told him about, nearly burning the kitchen down in the process. I laughed so hard I choked on my coffee. It wasn't constant, but it was consistent. One night, maybe a week into January, he called me after work. "You ever think about what this looks like in real life?" he asked. "Like, if we weren't in two different cities. If this wasn't born out of snowstorms and gingerbread failures?" "Yeah," I said. "I think about it all the time." He was quiet for a second, then said, "I've been talking to a guy here about a project. It's big, 3-month renovation. Pays well. If I take it, I could fly out to LA when it's done. See what this looks like in person, not just in theory." "You want to do that?" I asked. "I want to try," he said, "because I haven't stopped thinking about you since the day you walked through that cabin door." I swallowed hard. "Okay, then let's try." We did try. It wasn't all romance and fireside kisses. We had awkward FaceTimes, missed calls, days when work pulled us in opposite directions. But we made space. And slowly, something real began to form. Not a fairy tale, but a life. 3 months later, I was at LAX waiting for a familiar beat-up duffel bag to come through baggage claim. Mason walked through the doors in his old flannel, carrying a crooked smile and the same calm look he gave me the night we first shared a drink by the fire. I kissed him in front of everyone. This time, there was no storm, no pretending, just us.